Ladies and gentlemen, hello everybody. Welcome to this third panel discussion of the day at VSTREAM Africa. And in this panel, we are going to focus on crafting content strategies to engage local audiences in Africa and global markets. And we are very pleased to welcome eminent speakers for this discussion. Catherine Njari, Senior Manager Strategy Business Development, Safaricom. Harish Goyal, CEO Health and Wellness, ZSL Group. Percy M. Tetwa, co-owner and creative producer, Third Strand Media. Vuyo Sokupa Sowa, executive producer and CEO at Brightfire Pictures. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen. So I would first request you for a quick introduction about yourself, what you do, and your company activities. So just before we start the discussion. So first of all, I request Harish to introduce himself.
Good day, everyone. My name is Harish Goyal. I work with ZSL Group as the CEO for Health and Wellness. I am currently in the process of transition from Africa to US. So just last few weeks, and finally I'll be based out of New York. But last 7 years I have been looking after Africa's Z Entertainment in business. And it's been phenomenal learning and experience, and I'll be happy to share my learnings across this platform. Thank you.
So, Vuyo?
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Vuyo, executive producer at Brightfire Pictures. We are in content production for any platform. So I like to say we're a business that's very much platform agnostic. So we create content, entertainment content across the board. We do like to specialize in Pan-African content and as well as advertiser-funded programming. So yeah, I'll share my experiences across content consumption and creation in our space.
So yeah, thank you, Catherine. Your audio, Catherine.
Oops, sorry. So I'm saying I'm Catherine from Safaricom, and I'm a strategy manager as well as, and my role pretty much is to guide the organization in coming up with strategies that we win in terms of media and entertainment. I'm also tasked with identifying new business opportunities with regards to new media. So, and Safaricom is one of the biggest, actually is the biggest telco in Kenya with a 67.5 sort of market share. I'm happy to be here to share what exactly we are doing and how we perhaps can take the content conversation to the next phase. Thanks.
Yes, so Percy?
Afternoon, everyone. My name is Percy Teto. I'm the creative director of Third Strand Media, which is a company that I've co-founded and own. It's a family business, So we specialize in content production and creating formats for different broadcasters, whether it's online or really cable or anything like that. But also we've lately ventured into music production as well. So we're looking at distributing traditional music together with gospel music into those markets. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to get into the panel discussion. So first of all, I would like to highlight that the media and entertainment world is experiencing a new dynamic age with video streaming platforms creating new opportunities for all those involved in the production ecosystem, from writers to actors to everyone. Local content production has a wide audience potential, whether in Africa itself or within the African diaspora. So how can Africa live up to the challenges and cater for its audiences in line with their expectations? That is a little bit what we would look at in this panel. So first of all, I would like to ask Harish, given that your involvement in the media and entertainment and in different markets and also a lot in Africa, uh, how has the content consumption trends in Africa evolved in the recent years?
Thank you, Deepak. Thank you, everyone, for having me. Um, so Africa has, last 7 years of what I saw across the continent, it's a very dynamic market. I always say that, this is one, privileged continent having the best of many worlds. While, a lot of people, a lot of markets actually have spoken about, getting saturated, demand not going up, but Africa has been growing really across various technologies. While OTT is making its headway over there, there's pay TV market, which is it's a very strong pay TV market. And in terms of content consumption, what I have seen from early age of Hollywood content, the market was dominated by that, to a real high demand of the local content and a very successful local channels and the producers, and a lot of market growth has I have seen. And at the same time, a lot of customized and adapted content. We at Z, we had launched a couple of Bollywood channels with a lot of adaptation and customization in English and in French and in Amharic language and Swahili and so on. And this demand seems to be ever growing as I see it right now. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll ask Catherine to also tell us about her point of view on this topic of content consumption trends in Africa.
Okay, thanks, Deepak. To be specific, of course, I think Africa, we are a bit still far behind, and while the digital media is here with us, we still have a couple of challenges as the African continent, but we will catch up. But what I have noticed in terms of the consumption trend, and especially with regards to the digital media, to be specific in Kenya, of course, we are still heavily dictated by traditional media. The TV set into the home is that one place that brings the family together. But over time, what you have noticed is now everybody has smartphones. You get into the house, you're wired up, you have your Wi-Fi, you're consuming content on your phone. So the big screen, while it's still there, it's still dominant, but more and more consumers now are taking up consuming content on mobile phone, even when they are into the home space. Is that a good thing, bad thing? I think it's a good thing, because what it has dictated then, it means then consumers have the freedom to watch whatever they want to watch. You don't have to go in front of a TV set. It's a good thing for the content providers, because now you can produce, you can connect with your consumers in any digital media you want. YouTube is there. You can go to and consume anything that you want. So what I have noticed, of course, to be specific in Kenya, Netflix came in 2016, 2015. And of course, at that time, Kenyans would still pirate Netflix, even before it was, the pipes were open to Africa. And now what we are seeing is that more and more consumers are accepting the concept of paying for good content, and you having the freedom to watch whatever it is that you want to watch. So we have to be very, careful with regards to what it is that we provide our consumers, so that you keep them on and you can continue to, benefit in the long run. So that's what I'll have to say, Deepak.
Okay. So, Vuyo, based in the production world and having been involved in maybe several production projects, so you have probably seen some kind of evolution in the production concept, stories, and production techniques. So how have you seen this evolution, and what would you have to highlight on this topic?
Well, in terms of how I guess the changes have affected us as producers when we create content or projects, is that, you know, nowadays as a producer, you can't develop or create a project for just one platform. When you're thinking of creating something, you have to think all the different kinds of platforms that this particular IP can exist in the different forms in which it can exist in, because that then opens you up to further revenue that you can exploit. So I think as content producers, we've been challenged to not just think only for the traditional broadcasters, and that's where our content ends. I think you then have to go, okay, maybe the first window is broadcasting, but what happens to the third screen, the second screen that Kathy was talking about? What happens on mobile when your show is on air? You know, do you differentiate your content when it's on a main broadcast television linear platform, and do you differentiate it for mobile and all of that? You also then have to think about social platforms, that those have become broadcasters in themselves. You know, if you think of Instagram Reels, or I can't even keep up anymore, but I think it's Instagram Reels, Facebook Watch, and all of that. So you have to really design your pieces of content for multiple platforms. And I think then it has become a very exciting space, because I think we have opportunities also as content creators to test out bits of content before you potentially go and sell it to one particular broadcaster or advertiser. So if you think of the journey of an Issa Rae, for example, who started on a YouTube, but now is sitting within HBO or Warner. So you as a content producer, you approach creation in a very dynamic way as before, when it was just, I guess, directed to one single source. And also technology has made things a little bit less expensive. So if you can really get yourself on a good, you know, piece of hardware, like a phone, or, you know, and stuff like that, you don't necessarily have to have the big gear that, you know, will initially would have hindered you from playing into the space. So I think, you know, nowadays we've got a very dynamic environment in which we can create content.
Okay, thank you, Percy. So how are you being challenged with all this evolution, with all this demand for new stories, for use of new production techniques? How are you being challenged in your daily production life?
Okay, I think more than being challenged, it's the opportunity that presents itself. I think the many platforms they are, before all of this technology, we only dealt with one broadcaster, one screen, as Vuyo is saying. And now the opportunity is vast, because you're not limited to be dealing with one broadcaster, but also you are looking at the exciting space of dealing with your audience that has become broadcasters themselves. And so in a way, they influence your content. And if you pay attention and you learn to adapt, you are able to pick up a lot of the trends that they start. You know, the power that sits with the audience these days is immense, precisely because they get to choose. Over and above that, they are thrown with so much of the content. And I think one needs to think about relevance, into the markets that you are dealing with. How are you being relevant? How are you providing content that speaks to more than just the entertainment, but their aspirations as well? So often we are dictated to by platforms who are saying, this is where our audiences are, so speak to them at this point. And I think for me, by getting data from social media and looking at the streaming platforms that are there, and looking at the behavioral patterns of our audiences, the opportunities that we need to start looking at presenting content that speaks to their aspirations. Where is it that they are going? Where is it that they want to be? More than just entertainment, but also what do they need? And I think the responsibility we have as producers is to also deal with the need of this continent that is still far behind. What is it that can be provided through content, to bridge the gap, so that when the technology finds us, at least the people that were exposed to that content are ready to make the difference that needs to be made. So I think it's really exciting times. limitless for that matter. I think the competition is really on the idea. It's no longer about being first anymore. Is that what is your idea? Because when you are providing content in different platforms, the audience that you're speaking to is also providing content on their platform. So they've become broadcasters as well. So the need to be innovative and to be on point in understanding your audience has become that much more important. Yeah.
Okay. So, Catherine, as it is always referred to, that telco partnership is key to those who are in video streaming projects and platforms. So how is actually Safaricom or maybe in general as well, do you find the telcos opening doors or opening up so that those who are coming with creative ideas can have an avenue, can have an opportunity to showcase their talent?
Well, to date back all the way in 2015, which is actually when I joined Safaricom, I would say the telcos were not very open. The content conversation was still, that far off, conversation will never be of so much importance. But when I look at it now is we, to be specific, Safaricom have done a couple of strategic partnerships with over-the-top providers, international ones, and even local ones. So we are a bit more open to working with them. We now know and we understand and appreciate the importance of content. Content for a telco is about, the objective that it drives the data, it drives stickiness and retention, be it on mobile, be it at the home. So we now understand better why you need to work with as many partners as possible. So we usually open to work with over-the-top providers, local content producers, like there's a project now we are working on. We work with everybody in the ecosystem to ensure that we position ourselves as we are a connector, we are an aggregator. So we've built in a platform that anybody can come in and integrate with us. And of course, being a telco, we have the mobile money, we have the airtime bidding. So we own that whole payment ecosystem as well. So when the international providers come to us, yes, they may be charging in the foreign currency. So we are able to integrate them to our mobile money, and our customers are actually able to pay for the services. So it's strategic partnerships. We can't win the content conversation without partners, without producers, without the regulator. We have to work as much as possible with everybody else. And it has been a journey. But I can say where we are now, we have a better understanding and appreciation to take this conversation to the next level, because we now know what it means for us as well.
Okay, Harish, regarding this opportunity that producers can prevail of, I mean, if you look at the classical approach, when we had on the TV channels, before a producer can actually manage to get his content, there was like a whole lot of challenge and struggle before they can actually reach that. Now we are having different platforms like OTT platforms where, so how do you see, as from your background in broadcast, how do you see the opportunity? Are we actually creating more interesting stories from OTT platforms, or is it like balance on broadcast and on OTT?
Thank you. So I would say that, originally there was a time of broadcasting content on television on big screen. And we used to talk about episodes, which are like, 30 minutes, 45 minutes long. And then, screens started to become smaller. And we started to hear that, look, 45 minutes is too long for anyone to consume on a small screen on a device, which is not really a big enough device. So what we did actually, the same storyline which used to run over 45 minutes, there's a way to shrink it, because, there's a lot of camera angles are there, so basically, there came a time wherein we edited the content from 45 minutes to, which is episodes, to webisodes, for people to watch it on laptops. And we said maybe 15 minutes is good enough time for anyone to consume to ensure stickiness. And however, technology is ever developing and the thoughts are evolving. The screen became smaller from laptops to iPads to finally to the mobile devices. And what we actually could then understand that this content need to further shrink down to something called mobisodes, a a content that can be watched on a mobile device. So this journey I have seen in last decade, from episodes to webisodes to mobisodes. And mobisodes also, initially we used to say 7 minutes, then we said 5 minutes, then we said 2 minutes. So it is actually a journey from 45 minutes to 2 minutes today. And I have seen a lot of content which actually has done well on all the screens, irrespective of the size of screen. It depends on how well it has been edited. So that is actually, just to ensure that how do we leverage these things across various screens, and we don't. So I mean, in a way, we could leverage our library of 200,000 hours that we had created over a period of last 25 years. And we have Africa has been a good success story, wherein we have content available across all platforms, all technologies.
Okay. Vuyo, we just are still actually going through, I mean, experiencing the pandemic, which is affecting the whole world. And you are in production. You this is your the way you actually you work, and this is important part of your life. So how has this situation, I mean, from your perspective, not only for you but also for the production environment, affected the affected your work? So how have you been affected by this? And I mean, not just affected, because it's going on.
I don't know if you guys have about 3 hours for me to unpack the story, but I guess you don't. I've just recently come out of a production bubble. We were in it for 34 days, maybe 36, give or take, in terms of rigging. So we were doing season 2 of Old Neutral's Amazing Voices, which is a Pan-African singing competition. So I had to bring in groups from Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, Zimbabwe into South Africa to shoot, the actual competition. So ordinarily it would have been fine. You book flights, people come in, you shoot the show, and it's okay. But now we had to redesign everything, because from, the PCR testing that has to be done for the groups in order to come here, then you've got to be able to say, where are we shooting it? How are we keeping everybody safe? So you have to remove them from the actual city. So we couldn't shoot in Johannesburg, so we had to go somewhere secluded. And then you've got to house everyone, because ordinarily you would have only, as a producer, catered for the contestants and your judges, and that's it. Everybody else goes home every single day. But now suddenly I've got to have a budget for cast, crew, contestants, drivers, everyone, all living in a bubble. You've got to feed them, you've got to test them every single week, because you've got to make sure that nobody's getting, getting COVID, because you can't really, we couldn't really be completely secluded. So we had to really find ways in which we could use the same budget that was pre-approved last year, so to do the same thing. So luckily it's about partnerships. So you go into partnerships with people, with the venues, and you say, listen, I'll give you a bit of exposure if you can just decrease on your accommodation costs. Then you've got to find ways in which to feed people. And then you've got, like I said, you've got to then have a testing schedule where every week everybody gets tested. I've learned more about antigen testing and antibody testing to last me a lifetime. And you've got to do that. And then you've got to, and luckily, 36 days later, we had no incident, we had no case, but it was nerve-wracking. So beyond me having to focus on the creative output of why we are here, the whole time you are just worried about the safety of everybody. And people, generally when they're in a bubble, after day 3, day 4, they forget. So now you've got to be like, masks on, have you sanitized, and because then they forget, and they get comfortable. So it was really, really taxing, but I always say there's nothing that's impossible. If I could have brought, I mean, my crew was about 200 people, which I also had to reduce because I'm like, I can't possibly on the same budget, be able to accommodate the crew that I'd want. So you've got to, think of just strategies to survive and to still produce the output that you promised to your advertiser. So it is possible. It's just stressful because it's beyond, like I said, the creative output. It's about people's livelihood. But if you get everybody into the right mindset, it's definitely doable.
Okay, so let's see what Percy have to say about that, because in this context, we cannot say like, okay, we have to be resilient. Okay, we have to be prepared for such a situation. You create a library of contents, but for whom? At what budget? So how do you actually went through that?
So fortunately for us, we were not dealing with such a big crew as Vuyo has been dealing with, but I think it was a great challenge because the kind of content we are doing has to do with going into people's houses, has to go into surprising people. And oftentimes the people you are dealing with are not wearing masks, and you can always say to them, put on a mask because you're surprising them. So there's been a lot of adjusting that we've had to do on our end in terms of how do we shoot this content and readjust some of the format to still keep it entertaining, but without putting anyone's life in danger. Some of the productions we've had to put to a halt because they were just not feasible. Especially the ones where we were going into people's houses in terms of the surprise, because if you go in and explain to them that we are coming in, you mess up the surprise. So you're always caught between a rock and a hard place unless you really try and then create interim content that fits into that time slot that is less risky in terms of having to manage a lot of people that might be skeptical about the disease itself, because ultimately you're still dealing with people who are skeptic. You still need to be a principal and you now have increased your costs. And like Vuyo saying, you're not only worried about just creating the content, it's now you don't want to have an issue in your production house because you now have to shut down for 6 weeks until you figure out what the problem is. So I think what is great about this experience, though, is that I think management skill has risen, almost by 60%, because you now have to gain skill that you didn't have to have, and you couldn't hire anyone for this kind of skill because no one knew that there was going to be COVID-19 and still going on at this time. So you're always stuck in a place where you are not sure how to solve the problem because you are hoping that COVID goes away. Because even the content that you're creating, which might be minimalistic because people are still at home. What if things open up, economy changes, and all of a sudden that content that you should have been putting during the day is no longer interesting because everyone is not there to watch the content. So I think, though, for me, the greatest experience is having to build your instinct, okay. Because you can't go and research this anyway. Yeah.
Okay. So Catherine, with such a situation, I mean, there are some learnings because I'm sure it must have affected the content acquisition, the content programming. So how have you dealt with that, and what are the learnings from it for the future?
From a telco perspective, sorry to say that, but it was an upside to start with. I mean, the operators, you're all in the house, you need connectivity.
Yeah.
So it was an upside, to be honest, for
Sure.
telcos. And that upside is still being observed. Well, based on where we are going, at that time we had actually not started aggregating local content at that time.
Okay.
So there was no, immediate impact at that point. But what we are doing now, one of the places that where the business was actually affected is our fixed business, and of course retail stores, our sales operations. Of course, those were affected because then if you need to go and connect a consumer in the house, then you have to make sure you're all, geared up and keeping everybody pretty much safe. Now, as we began our journey in terms of aggregating content, of course, how we began working, of course, changed. We are still working from home. We're interacting with the producers online. It's something nobody ever thought, but as everyone is saying, you figure it out, you find a way of dealing with it. And we are about to hopefully soon launch our video on demand platform, thanks to, combining our skill set and working together where, it doesn't matter where exactly you are in the continent here.
Mm-hmm. Harish, so earlier you talked a little bit about localization of content, the way you were approaching it. But when we speak of producing African content for Africa, Africa is multiple languages. So how normally you try to, if you want really the majority of the audience to capture whatever new content, whatever you're bringing on board. So how to actually localize in terms of localization strategies, how to approach it?
Thank you. I would say storylines are universal. So when you are actually, looking at Africa, the way we looked at Africa is a continent of 50 plus different states, different languages, and the consumption pattern varies. Level of technology, internet availability, mobile availability varied, and we are widely distributed on the pay platforms across various markets. So what we actually said is we got in bit of focus group studies. That's something which we have uniquely used. Every time we are actually launching and producing some content, we pick up, let's say, 10 different storylines, and we go through focus group with the target audience, and we say which one will work among the audience. And then those audience 400 500 that we use for focus group, they tell us of these 10 which one is their first choice, second choice, and third choice. And that way, the selection of storylines become very easy for us. And then after that, once the storyline is actually selected, putting different soundtracks is relatively easy. And for Africa, English Anglophone market is the biggest, followed by the Francophone, which is the French-speaking market. So English across 44 countries, French across 26 countries, and then Lusophone, which is more of Portuguese market. And after that, one gets into the regional block of, let's say, Swahili in East Africa and Hausa in Nigeria and that part of West Africa. And it's a never-ending long list of what wide opportunities exist when you are actually looking at a continent this wide, which is Africa. And last year we did launch a product in Amharic language, which is widely used in Ethiopia. And talking of a combination of technology, I am actually I've not traveled for a year now. And last year around this time, I had to come back from South Africa to Singapore. And that's from where I'm now speaking to. And the job was to launch a channel in Ethiopia in Amharic language in coordination with my team in South Africa. And the content was to be produced, which was Amharic spoken, and we got very innovative, wherein we actually produced this content in Kenya, because at that time what we were looking for is a country that is open, wherein we could actually produce this content without curfews and stuff like that. And fortunately, this became very efficient process for companies like us, because even artist was not able to travel out, so we could very easily get the entire day available from them. So what we needed, the time we needed, like 9 months to produce something, and we could complete it in 4 months. So it's a overall a great combination of technology and the concept and localization and so on.
Okay, so Vuyo, if tomorrow somebody comes to you, gives you the budget, and tells you, okay, I want you to create some content which will be, the kind of language that we say viral, engaging. So, if you have to decide on the genre, on the type of content that you would want to work on, what will that be?
Oof, that's a tough one. So, I mean, I think traditionally on our continent, it goes without saying that scripted content, which is dramas, telenovelas, soapies, that will garner high audiences and high viewers. So you can't, I mean, if I was given that money and I needed impact and to create, I don't know, a winner, I would go with a scripted piece of offering, because I know for a fact Africans love stories. We will watch stories whether they come from Bollywood and it is dubbed or it is subtitles. We will watch Spanish telenovelas. We will watch Nollywood. And I mean, currently myself, I have just finished a Korean series on Netflix, which was very long, but it was subtitled and it's a story. So, you know what I mean? And you follow the journey and you watch it. So I think scripted content is still rated very highly on the continent, and I'm sure globally. But, for me, another form of genre that I would go for is reality, because I think as much as it doesn't have the high numbers that scripted may have, people love to watch themselves or watch people like them, or peer into people's lives and kind of go, oh, if I'm in that predicament, I wonder how I would have reacted. So I do specialize in reality television. So it's a genre that I know that, especially in South Africa, if I speak for SA, it's fast becoming a contender with scripted. So those are the two that I think I would probably opt for. And in terms of comedy, I think comedy is always good. And comedy, people like a relief, they like escaping. Rom-coms are equally the same type of place that you would want to go to. So yeah, I think in my mind, those are the key.
Okay. So hopefully one of the audience members is an investor and would be wanting to invest in that project. Okay, so talking of the audience, I would also remind our audience that they can actually put questions to the panelists. We already have one question which is there, so we'll come to that a little bit later. So you can put your questions and then later on we will take it up. Okay, so now I would like to ask Percy, I mean, you've been in production world. What has actually inspired you? What are the contents? What are what you have seen that has inspired you to want to produce content?
So I think what inspires me and what drives me, I think I'll speak for what's happening in South Africa, is really producing content that can bridge the gap between
Percy, yes. Percy, what I really want to know is, you as everyone, we are inspired by content. There's one content which makes you think, hey,
okay,
I want to produce.
The content that inspires me is definitely, I would say, the scripted, the dramas inspire me quite a bit, because I think you have an opportunity to create a make-believe world, that you can influence and put characters that can program and influence people to the direction that gives them relief and so on. But I think what also inspires me, which I think there's a big gap in this continent, is documentaries. I think there's there's not enough documentaries that are being produced in Africa. And I think there's a real gap and a time to produce documentaries, especially if you want to, export content to the rest of the world. There's so much that has not been said about Africa, to the world. So for me, those two genres would be the genres that would really inspire me to do the work that I do.
Okay, so I'll just take this question that we have from the audience. Maybe I don't know, Harish or Catherine would want to comment on that. So budgets, it's from David Mina. Okay, so budgets reserved for content. Why is it so different in Nigeria and South Africa compared to other regions? For example, East Africa.
So I will try to answer it. One thing that I learned as an expat, having lived 7 years in Africa, and I lived in South Africa, but I managed Africa. Africa is not a wide brush continent. It's a very fine brush continent. So when you talk about 54 different states, you talk about, East Africa and West Africa and Southern Africa and the North Africa. What essentially works in South Africa doesn't necessarily it's not guaranteed to work in Nigeria. And what works in Nigeria definitely is not guaranteed to work in East Africa. So that's one thing that, what works in a market, that determines how much money you want to spend. Second is the demand. Actually, there is, invariably, there are some parts of Africa wherein there is a higher consumption compared to an average consumption in some part. So as a investor, we always look as to, where does it make a better business case? And the third is your own unique USP, what is your specialization? Like, from my companies and my experience perspective, we were very clear that out of 54 countries, we cannot go headless. So our top priorities have to be, number 1, South Africa, number 2, Nigeria, and number 3, Kenya and Tanzania. And then we said, okay, what is the next level of priority? And accordingly, that's how the budgets were defined and spent and the content produced.
Okay, so this question from David Mina from Transglobe Communication. Catherine, would you want to add something on that?
No, I don't want to add anything. I think Harish has stated it very well.
Yeah, okay. So if back to the audience, if you have any questions, so you can obviously ask us about it. So I'll just come back to Harish regarding one aspect which is also very pertinent in targeting the audience is the analytical tools. I mean, how can analytical tools drive your audience targeting strategy, and how, from your experience, have you seen it working and impacting on whatever you've been doing?
So I am a big fan of analytics and research. So unlike Vuyo and Percy, I am not a creative person. I can tell you that I only wear black and white, and that's the only color you see, and that's why you can't make out of my jacket and shirt. So, and I am a telecom engineer. You have to understand that, So for me, I see, everything the way maybe Catherine looks at life, Safaricom and Vodacom, because I worked with a telecom operator before. Second thing is, having come to entertainment business without any background knowledge and experience, one obvious thing that I did is, in the first 6 months of my getting into this particular genre and segment of entertainment and media, we got a lot of research done as to what kind of content uptake is there in which market. And as I said, Africa is a big continent. And for me, priority was actually, as to how do I prioritize among these 54 countries? Where do I spend my dollars first? And then how do I fast track the returns on it? apart from various research agencies that we used and the syndicated research we got it done, after one big study that we actually used and done in Anglophone market and Francophone market and in our key targets, we still continue to use something called focus group, as I mentioned earlier in one of the questions. Focus groups tell us clearly as to, how much is going to be a consumption. It becomes that much easier. Even that helps us tell what should be the name of the show, let's say. I mean, even if, from my perspective and my team perspective, because even in my own team, it was a largely South African team. So which means, how do I know as to what should be the title of this show when it is running in Nigeria, which is the biggest market for our product? And how is it, going to be conceived and conceptualized and seen in Ghana or in Zambia? So that way, this focus group actually gives us a quite a elaborate view on everything.
Okay, so I have a question for Catherine from the audience. So from Bright Yeboah from WeFlix. So what is a telco giant like Safaricom doing to help local OTT players who are pushing African content in the streaming and entertainment space?
Okay, so I mentioned that as a telco, we are more than open to strategic partnerships. We've done a couple of those partnerships, and how we look at the partnerships is that we enable the different partners, be it the international, regional, or even local over-the-top providers. So we offer them a set of value, benefits. Some of those benefits is obviously Safaricom has the biggest subscriber base. So we'll give you access to, that ready base that is ready to consume your content. We give you a payment enablement. So we give you the ability to integrate to our mobile money, to our airtime. We also give you, the distribution avenue. We have a big mobile base. We have a big, we're also into the home providing fixed connectivity. So if you partner with us, you have access to that. We also offer some sort of co-location services to our partners. And towards, of course, at the end of it, for it to work, we need to educate our customers. So there's an aspect of marketing that we provide. So we are more than happy and ready to work with different partners, and we've actually been doing it. So VSTREAM, we are more than happy to have the conversation because our work is, we've positioned ourselves as an aggregator. So nothing stops us from working with anybody. Yeah.
Okay, so now just quickly for a roundup of what kind of evolution future you want to see regarding content production and content that we have proposing to the African audience. So Vuyo.
I think for me, it's an exciting time, as stated previously by everybody in this panel, for content and for consumers and audiences. I think with all the platforms that are coming up, I think the opportunity lies where we can create more content and not just simply acquire already existing content and shuffle it around on the different platforms. I think each platform now has to have a content strategy that is going to attract audiences, and people basically follow pieces of content. So if you can create original formats or original content for your platform, audiences are waiting and audiences want to consume. So gone are the days where somebody's only going to have one subscription to, let's say, for example, a DSTV, and that's all they have. Audiences or consumers now are going to have an entertainment bucket where they say, I will have a DSTV, I will have a Netflix, I will have a Niroko, I will have, a whole lot of things. But when I get there, what am I finding? So I think producers are there, and we've got ideas. We need to just produce more content for the African audiences who are ready and waiting.
Okay, so in as short as 2 minutes, Percy, what can you say regarding that in terms of what you want to see?
I think agreeing pretty much with what Vuyo was saying, but I think what is important is an open conversation with the broadcasters or the content aggregators. Over and above us generating original content, I think it's important for us to share the data that speaks to the kind of audience that sits in their platforms so that we can also produce accurately, you know. I think at the same time, it would be great to go into a lot of co-productions with content aggregators or platforms, you know, to reduce the risk that production companies are facing, especially with budgets being reduced and stuff like that. I think also much more open and fair license agreements as well that allow for content producers to own content as well, because that is really where the money is. And I think if we do own content, we have a little bit money in our pocket and we can produce more content and stop chasing our tails at times. Yeah.
Okay, guys, we have to wrap up now the panel. I would really thank all of you for giving time and participating in this panel in a very interesting discussion, which I hope have inspired many people in the audience, or eventually those who will be listening to it when we'll be posting it online. So thank you very much, Harish. Thank you, Vuyo. Thank you, Percy. Thank you, Catherine.